Hello, Dan Alasso with History for Today. So last time I talked about why I make Pressbooks OERs for my students. Today I want to talk a little bit about how I do it. The Pressbooks editing interface will be familiar to anybody who has had any experience using WordPress for blogging, which is a lot of people. A Pressbooks ebook is basically a series of expanded static pages that are hosted on a server somewhere and are accessible to readers in HTML format and a number of different additional formats that you can choose. It's possible to host your own Pressbooks instance, I believe, although I haven't looked into it in the last couple of years because I'm no longer as interested in maintaining my own domains and websites as I once was. It's also an advantage to publish on an instance of Pressbooks that other people are using too, because then you may attract readers just by having your book available on a virtual bookshelf with other similar stuff. The instance of Pressbooks that I'm using actually is only partly aligned, as it turns out, with what I'm doing. I use the Minnesota Library Publishing Project's instance of Pressbooks, which was originally designed to allow library patrons throughout the state an opportunity to publish ebooks of their own for free. Public libraries throughout Minnesota have access to the platform, and patrons have created collections of essays, creative writing, histories of Minnesota towns and events and memoirs and cookbooks, all kinds of different things. There is actually an educational version of Pressbooks available, which is more expensive to host and includes access to additional interactive features like H5P. I haven't actually used it yet, although I do have trial access for one project through the Open Education Network. I'll probably use that for my next project. Up to now, the basic access has actually worked just fine for me. The basic features of my ebooks are text and graphics and video. I've been considering adding audio narration into the text, but I want it to serve a purpose rather than just being another gimmick that I'm only using because it's available. Generally, I don't write text in Pressbooks, although you could do that. In the past, I've preferred writing in Word so that I could track my changes. Today, I've been writing this script in Obsidian, but Word's track changes feature is still very attractive to me for longer projects like book chapters. Pressbooks has its own version tracking capability too, I should mention. So if you want to compare what you've got today with a previous version, it is quite easy to do. The fact that your ebook is going to be live on the internet also means that any reader who opens it gets the very latest version. And this has interesting implications, I think, for textbooks, which will no longer need to go through lengthy revision processes between editions. Of course, if people are downloading ebook or PDF or other types of versions of your work onto local devices, they may not be continually updated. For example, I've had my American Environmental History textbook scraped off the web by LibreText, a California-based OER outfit. That's perfectly legal because I made the text available under a Creative Commons license. So as long as LibreText doesn't charge for the content, and as long as they give me credit, attribution as an author, and as long as they license it in the same way, I'm happy. I'll talk more about Creative Commons licensing in another video soon. One nice aspect of the Open Textbook Library, which is part of the Open Education Network hosted by the University of Minnesota, is that my pages on the library just redirect users to my own Pressbook files. So anyone browsing on the Open Textbook Library will get the latest and greatest version of my content. They can also read in-depth reviews by other users. Generally, because this is a textbook library, there will be faculty at other institutions who have read the book to determine whether or not they want to use it in their own classes. The Open Textbook Library has a fairly extensive review questionnaire, which covers 10 key aspects of the content. One of the anxieties that people sometimes have about open educational resources is that commercial textbooks, they think, go through a process that OERs don't. Of course, we're never really 100% sure what the agendas of the editorial teams at commercial publishers might be. But in any case, the Open Textbook Library has tried to address this issue by screening the materials that they add before they add them, and then by encouraging peer reviews. So now let me begin with the part that you've probably been wondering when I was going to get to, and show you how I actually use the Pressbooks application. I generally have text files, as I said, that I've already written that are the basis of a chapter. So the first step is to open up a project and to go through the navigation page to the part that I'm going to work on, and then paste the text into that workspace. Now, because I don't want my ebook to be just an endless scroll of text, the next step, of course, is to add images and other things. Since I want my content to be freely available under a Creative Commons license, I need to make sure that I'm using openly licensed images. And I'll expand in yet another video on the many ways that you can get openly licensed images. But for now, I'll just say that when in doubt, Wikimedia Commons images are nearly always either in the public domain or Creative Commons licensed, and they list the source information that I'm going to need for my citation. And they've also been chosen in a somewhat competitive process as people have created and edited those wiki pages that they're found on. So they're generally pretty good at conveying their points. I can copy the image and add it to the media selector in my Pressbooks file. And this will open a window where I get a form where I can paste in the source URL, the name of the image's creator, if there is one, and the license type. I can also write a caption that will appear in the text beneath the image in my ebook, and also an alternative description that will be useful to vision impaired readers. A nice thing about this Pressbooks media worksheet is that it creates an attribution list that I can choose to have displayed at the end of my chapter, which I generally do. This shows the sources, and it actually links back to the original URLs where I got them, so that users who may want to see a bigger image, or teachers who may want to include a higher res image in their own course materials or PowerPoint deck for a lecture, can find it. It's also my way of documenting that my use of all the images in the text is legal and that the ebook is on the up and up. I'll say more in another video about the difference between fair use, the way educators have traditionally used texts and images in the past, which is still legal and is still extensively used inside of classrooms and in course-specific learning management systems, and full-on open licensing, which is what you need to do if you want to put your stuff up on the web to be seen by anybody and everybody in the world, which is kind of my goal. Another thing that I want to do in my ebooks is give students an opportunity to interact with the text and to respond to it. So after each main idea in the text, I add a couple of what I call questions for discussion that students can use as prompts if they're stumped for things to say or to write about what they've just read. These are supposed to be conversation starters. So they're generally not yes or no questions or information retrieval types of questions. They're a little bit more open-ended. I'm still a bit torn about how much I want to quiz my students on data, especially in my survey classes. Part of my task this coming semester will be resolving that challenge as I move from a more traditional classroom to the hybrid flexible class format that I'm going to use. And I will discuss that as I make those decisions. I make these questions for discussion by altering an item in the drop-down menu called Key Takeaways. And the look of this feature and all the features in the drop-downs will vary slightly depending on which Pressbooks theme you've chosen. I found this one actually by trial and error, and I actually chose this theme because I like the way this feature looks. Another nice feature of Pressbooks is that you can preview what the reader will see in the ebook as you go. I generally do this after each save. And I generally save fairly regularly, even though Pressbooks has an auto-save feature. Manual saves give me places that I can go back to when I use the versions tool as well. And when I look at the previews, I can see how the images are working, whether they're sized right and positioned right, whether there's an appropriate number of images relative to the text, and whether I've remembered to choose the right types of texts for things like headings, if I'm using them, that sort of thing. So the process of building a chapter is basically just doing these steps over and over again until I reach the end. I would say, though, don't underestimate the amount of time that it takes to find images, grab them, insert the source information, and place them in the text. In addition to images, of course, you can also place videos. And that process is actually a little bit easier since you're not really inserting a video, you're just linking to it, embedding it. The Pressbooks app handles all of the heavy lifting of this, and the source information and the licensing information all reside on the video's source page, not in your ebook. Copyright law currently considers an embedded video as not a copy. Of course, that could change. And of course, you can't alter these videos beyond the choice of a starting point when you grab the embed code. Otherwise, you could potentially have issues. So it's something to think carefully about. One of the coolest features of the ebook format, of course, is that you can insert hyperlinks anywhere that you want to provide background information, to create branching pathways through the text, or other options for the reader that are limited only really by your creativity. It's important, though, to consider the longevity of outside links, and this probably also applies to video embeds. I don't want my readers to try to follow a hyperlink and find out that it turns out to be dead. Some potential solutions to this might include choosing my external links very carefully. Wikipedia pages are probably safer than New York Times articles, for example. Or a more complex solution would involve creating an archive of the pages that I want to link to, and then linking to those archived pages rather than to the originals. This could be extremely time-consuming, though, and it might, once again, open me up to copyright issues that I don't really want to deal with. So I'll have to have some real compelling reason to do something like that. I haven't tried it yet. As I've been playing with ebooks over the past few years, I've also begun thinking about that whole long scroll of text issue. I'm happy with my OER ebooks as alternatives to print or ebook commercial textbooks, but I'm not entirely sure that I'm satisfied with the long chapter format and the ways that my readers navigate through the content, which seems to be a legacy of print publishing. I'll be playing with that in the coming months and, of course, reporting on it as I do. In the meantime, though, I hope this was a useful introduction to the baseline process that I'm using to make my ebooks. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. I'll see you again next time.